All right. Well, welcome back, Nutrition Club. Um, Dennis here. I think everybody probably knows that, but I'm in the future might be sharing this link or this recording with some folks who are new to what we're doing. So go ahead and give myself an intro. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist with the NSCA, graduate certificate in sports nutrition, working as a strength coach, health coach. And this here Nutrition Club is a weekly virtual meeting done on Mondays at noon. And we're going to be covering all kinds of topics. We've been doing so for the past couple weeks, but I'm going to call this week one, and those other weeks will be tester weeks. And so to kick it off, I really would like for two things to happen in these meetings. One, I would always like to open with a nutrition education piece, and then I'd like that to last for about 10 minutes or so, and then really open it into discussion about the topic, and then to take some time to really address like individual obstacles or successes for everybody that's in the group, as long as the group is a manageable size. If we ever get bigger, then I don't know, we'll have to figure that out. So I thought it was appropriate to start from scratch and to really just start with what is my personal philosophy when it comes to nutrition. Who am I if you're going to listen to me, and what might you expect if you were going to ask for me to guide you in your nutrition journey or your fitness journey. And so I think the best way to do it is to kind of contrast my personal philosophy with a lot of what's already out there being marketed. And so I definitely fall somewhere in the paleo, ancestral, natural, primal diet world. But what are all those? What does that really mean? And what does that mean to me? So that's going to be my topic today. I'm actually going to keep it pretty quick. As I was preparing for this, I actually just wrote my thoughts out, not literally onto paper. I actually used my phone notes. That's like the best way for me to get my thoughts out. So I wrote it on my phone first, and then I printed it out. But I was reviewing it today, right before this meeting, and I thought, actually, it will probably be best if I just read to y'all what I put down, because I like the way it's written, and I don't want to miss anything. So it should only take about a minute or so, and then we'll just jump right into discussion, because I really think that this topic is best teased out in discussion format. So without further ado, here's what I wrote in my journal. Sharing time, story time. Okay, so paleo, natural diet, ancestral diet, primal lifestyles, what exactly are they and why do they matter? So for me, I think paleo is the most probably well-known. And, there's certain rules with paleo. You can't eat dairy, you can't eat certain foods, but primal allows you to eat dairy, etc. And this is where I think it starts to get really kind of mucky. So for me, paleo is really more of a mental exercise. It asks the question, could our ancestors have eaten this 10,000 years ago? If the answer to that is no, then you probably shouldn't either. Or in other words, we probably shouldn't eat processed foods, right? But it goes deeper than that. So for me, why paleo is important, I kind of watered this down to what I call the 3 paleo truths. And these truths explain how we relate to food. So truth number 1 is cooking changed everything. If you compare us to the rest of the animals in nature, what's the big difference in how we eat? It's we cook food. And if you do the anthropology, archaeology, all that, you see that with the advent of fire, when we began to cook, is when the human brain and the human culture really began to shift drastically, and where we almost began to separate from nature. And a lot of times we see ourselves now as separate from nature. And so what cooking did is it allowed us to eat a larger variety of foods. Cooking often takes out the toxicity of certain foods. It allows us to get more nutrition out of foods. A lot of times the process of cooking itself makes certain nutrients within the food more bioavailable, and it is easier to digest. So we literally don't have to use as much metabolic energy to get the nutrients out of the food. Essentially, cooking is a first step in digestion. So this meant that we had more energy for community, for problem solving, and ultimately brain power. And the sciencey side of this is what's called the expensive tissue hypothesis. And so about the time that we started cooking foods is about the time where you started to see the exponential growth in the human brain. And the idea is that certain tissues in the body are very metabolically expensive. They require a lot of calories to maintain. And what you saw was as our brain expanded in size and power, our colon shrunk. And this makes sense because we were cooking the food. We didn't need such a large colon to digest anymore. So that shrunk, and we were allowed to give more energy to our brain expansion. And that's one of the major differentiators between us and the rest of the primates today. So cooking changed everything. But maybe you're thinking, okay, so this means cooking meat, right? And you're going to tell me next that all we're supposed to eat is grass-fed beef and nose to tail carnivore, because you all have heard me say that before, those who are here. But the truth is we ate, so this is truth number 2, we ate whatever we could get, right? So that means sometimes we fasted, and this is where keto comes into play. Dave here is very successful with the keto diet. And the idea of keto is that you're using your endogenous ketones. So basically an alternate energy source to carbohydrates in order to fuel your big brain. Because again, the brain is wanting energy first. And in ancestral diets, when we're looking back, ketosis was really what allowed us to stay alive in fasted scenarios, in times of famine, or just in gaps between hunts or whatever it was. So when we are short on calories or carbohydrates and we don't have glucose to fuel the brain, our body, through our fat stores, and our liver will process that fat and create ketone bodies, or again, these energy substrates that are created from within us, from our fat, to fuel our brain. So we ate whatever we could get, and sometimes that was nothing. So our body has built-in mechanisms to continue to have homeostasis day in and day out, despite what we get. And this is why it's not an immediate feedback system. This is why it won't be very obvious exactly what you should eat, because you can go a long time without adequate nutrition. And so it sometimes meant, it was feast or famine. Sometimes we ate lots of meat. Sometimes we had to eat lots of vegetation. Sometimes we lived near the ocean. Sometimes we lived near the woods. So it really just depended. And we also ate seasonally. I think this is an important point too, and something that could potentially apply in our lives today. Because when we look in our grocery market today, you can get citrus fruits year round. You can get basically everything year round. But that was not true until really very, very recently, in the last couple hundred years. essentially, up until the last couple hundred years, we farmed. You had a season for growing the crops, and you had the harvest season, and maybe certain things like animal products you could get year round, depending where you lived. And so the thing that is important too, I'll make one final point about eating whatever we could get, is that when we're talking about ancestral diets, you know, the mental exercise of paleo is, yes, could you have eaten this 10,000 years ago? Could you have hunted it, or could you have gathered it? But the reality is there's been some evolution in our diets and in our physiology since then, and some very recently. So when you're thinking about ancestral diets and eating whatever we could get, you want to start looking back even to more recent generations. So when we look at certain cultures, the Asian culture, for instance, that's a big culture, but some Asian cultures are allergic to beer. They're allergic to the yeast in the beer. Some African hunter-gatherer cultures, the Maasai, they can eat insane amounts of dietary cholesterol, and their blood cholesterol will not go up. They have essentially a genetic variance that allows them to metabolize cholesterol. Some cultures are more sensitive to gluten, some are more sensitive to dairy, and it goes on and on and on. So if you're trying to figure out what's best for you, it's important that you understand where you came from, and even very recently. And then finally, truth number 3 is not what we did do, but what we didn't do. So when we're thinking about paleo, right, the importance of paleo is to look at what we didn't do. So we didn't have technology designed by scientists to hijack our brains. We didn't have chemicals in almost every product that we're touching throughout the day. Our soaps, our deodorants, our shampoos, our water, our clothes, everything, right? And we didn't live weird schedules, right? And so we didn't go out partying all night. We didn't do shift work. And if you did, it was probably very rare. So when we're looking at paleo, it's not just what did we eat, but it's how did we live, and how is it different than what we're doing today? Because when we're thinking about our body and the inputs, it's not just the food, but it's kind of the whole biorhythm. And if you're willing to look at us as an animal, this shouldn't seem that unusual, right? You're not going to find an owl that's just a one-off that's up all day doing its thing in the sunshine, right? And if you did, you would expect that owl probably wouldn't flourish and wouldn't be very healthy. So the question is, what is natural to us? And so those are my 3 truths. Cooking changed everything, which meant we could eat a lot more. So truth number 2 is we could eat what we could get. And then truth number 3 is that there's just certain things that we didn't do and we didn't have that are here today and affecting us. So that leads into my final point. I'll kind of summarize. So when we're looking at natural diet, natural lifestyle, integrative and functional nutrition, we essentially ask 2 questions: what's missing and what's extra, or what's toxic and needs to be removed. And in order to get there, we look at 2 things. So we kind of use the paleo lens, and we look at what's universally true for humans. For instance, we know we need protein, we know we need fat, we know we need carbs, but what's also true for the individual. And to finish on one final point, and this is the most important point, what's true for the individual is different for every individual. And so in order to hit your goals, it will require work. There is no cookie cutter answer. Paleo, primal, keto, ancestral, whatever you name it, and more likely if it has a name, it's not perfect for you. I want to end there, period. So do the work. And that's what I'm here for. So I'm here to help you figure out what's missing and what's extra and what's specific to you, and to help guide you so that you can do the work. I know you guys are willing, but what work should be done, right? Same reason you show up to the gym in the morning and see me. It's like, I know I need to exercise, but what exercise should I do? What reps should I do? Right? Okay, so what am I missing with food? What's extra in my life? Show me what that is. Let's collaborate and do the work.
Well said.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's open it up.
What do you think about, like, some of the natural product stores out there? They'll do like blood testing on you to figure out what your diet needs, what type of diet is right for you, that
Yeah.
type of stuff. What's your feelings on that?
I don't think there's a lot of conclusive evidence for like the blood type diets.
Mm-hmm.
I do think blood testing can be very powerful when it comes to looking at micronutrients and blood lipids and that type of thing. And that is something I'm working towards. So I enrolled in a program. It's the Integrative and Functional Nutrition credential, so I can be a certified practitioner. And the goal with that, because really I can learn and study that on my own, is to be able to order blood testing, to be able to order genetic testing and whatnot. But in the meantime, you can get a lot of that from your physician. But that really is the next level, and very powerful, right? It's easy for me to say to you, I think getting 5,000 IU of vitamin D a day is probably optimal. And that's probably pretty decent advice. But unless we have a blood test to match that against, it's just a cookie cutter piece of advice. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I've met with individuals at my other job who said that they were taking 5,000 IU a day for 3 months and their vitamin D levels didn't go up, and they had to step up to 10,000. I've had other people who tell me, "Oh, I take 1,000 a day," and the doctor told me I'm through the roof. So, again, it is individual. Triglycerides, cholesterol, all that, right? So one of my big things is cholesterol. For most people, it is an overblown issue, right? So your body, for most people, likes to regulate cholesterol. 75% of the cholesterol in your body is produced by your body. You have what's the word called? A governor. If you take in more cholesterol, your body will downregulate how much you produce so that you're at balance. If you take in less, your body will upregulate how much you produce to be at balance. But there is a small population who does not regulate that. And if they take in too much dietary cholesterol, it will just continue to go up and up and up. So you can't know that without the blood testing. Yeah, so that's my answer for blood tests.
And you said paleo doesn't do dairy?
I don't even remember all the rules anymore because every diet has kind of their own set of rules. I think paleo is no grains, no dairy, but primal allows dairy. I think that's the difference. But again,
Yeah.
to what end, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm just thinking, like as you mentioned, I'm doing obviously the keto thing. I like the clean eating. I think that's key. I think regardless of your size or anything, everyone should be looking for clean. I don't think there's a single person out there who should favor processed foods, period.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
everyone does. I mean, how many people go to McDonald's every day? Hopefully, it doesn't get you banned off of YouTube from me saying that. But I mean, there's just nothing healthy there.
Right. Yeah. So for those, if this is the first time hearing it, when we're talking about processed foods, um, it's mostly processed, so refined carbohydrates, things with sugar added, or artificial sweeteners, and refined oils, usually specifically seed oils or vegetable oils like canola oil, palm oil. And so typically where you'll find this is in the center aisles in a store. So if you're looking at something with a label and it has like 14 different ingredients, that is a highly processed food. And so that's a point I use a lot. So if you're trying to eat paleo or natural, you want ideally one ingredient foods. What's a one ingredient food? Egg, right? What's the ingredient in egg? It's egg. What's beef is beef, chicken is chicken, apple is apple, right? There should be no questions about what is this food made out of. So where do I stand on the Impossible Burger? No, don't do it. Um, Anything that requires that much manufacturing and processing, somewhere along the lines, there's something that's going to violate what your body wants. A lot of it is just
Corrupted.
the oxidizing of the fatty acids and the bleaching and the processing. But either way, you don't even need to know that necessarily just to kind of understand that it's probably not good for you. And you can see this in the population data. I mean, when they basically when they invented, I think it was like Crisco, and they started. There was a good talk on this. I could share it in the group. They started refining these vegetable oils, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to use it for. Was it going to be like an energy source, like a fuel, or was it like for cars? Was it going to be for? And they use corn oil for. I think they can fuel cars with that.
Yeah.
Or what were they going to use it
Oh,
for? Were they going to use it for some kind of body care product? And eventually they figured out that they could turn it into like a dairy alternative, like a butter alternative. And so we started to see shifts like this at the exact same time as when you started to see this severe deterioration in population health and the rise in US and global chronic disease. So is it conclusive causal evidence? Maybe not, but it's pretty compelling when the charts rise side by side, almost exactly.
it's like anytime you see something says low fat, run for the hills.
Right.
To make it low fat, you got to do something to it. I mean, some things you don't. You can make milk lower fat without adding anything.
Yeah.
But like salad dressings, for example, or a lot of those things. I mean, they make them low fat. I mean, they completely destroy whatever integrity it had.
Well, you could probably speak on this point better than I probably even can, Dave. So it's like if you're trying to think about that paleo mindset, right? What could your ancestors eat 10,000 years ago? Let's do the hunter-gatherer thing. And we're talking about net carbs because you're somebody who counts net carbs. Like how hard would it be to get 400 grams of net carbs off of fruits and vegetables?
In those days, it'd be impossible. Right? I mean, because the highest carbs you're going to find are going to be in plants, right? I mean, really, because unless you're grinding down grain to make breads and refining sugars down, you couldn't eat enough nuts to give you the carbs because the fiber is going to net it all out. And on the vegetables, they're so fibrous, it's really hard to get any material carbs there. Yeah, I mean, what did you say the average American eats in carbs? If you were going to just guess, I'm going to hold you to it, but in excess of 400, 500 a day?
I think probably. Yeah. Yeah. If
You know,
somebody's
and
not following a diet.
yeah. And if you're doing like, with the keto stuff, I mean, I won't go over 20. And which, but the thing is so much, everything is refined. Everything is bread based. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but When's the last time you went through a day and didn't have a piece of bread as a main part of something? Whether it's breakfast, you're having some toast, or lunch is, a sandwich for so many people. You throw in pastas, which I love pasta, I love bread, but I think those are what's killing us. I mean, I kind of point the finger back as you were saying it. What was it, the mid 70s, when everything was about low fat, right? Everyone, for whatever reason, thought fat made people fat, and everyone went low fat, and suddenly it was, the government was pushing grains, and that was just all carbohydrates, and everything was fake oils, margarines, and so forth. And I think it's what absolutely killed. Oh, Matt sent us something there too.
Yeah. Well, that is a good segue to next week's topic. I'm not going to get into it, but I'll share a little bit foreshadow. So, talking about like adequate intakes, recommended daily allowances, tolerable upper limits. So, talking about micronutrients. But it used to be that those were set by the USDA. The U.S. Department of Agriculture determined what we needed, right? And so you start thinking about, looking at the history of who's advocating for what is a healthy diet, who's saying we should eat high carb, low fat, who's saying how much of certain vitamins or minerals you should get. It's kind of odd when the person who's telling you that stands to profit from it.
Yeah.
So one thing I noticed, I don't even know when this shift actually happened. It kind of happened under my nose, or maybe it's been happening, but now the RDAs are set by the Institute of Medicine, so that's good. At least they're on the surface not biased.
Well, yeah, but they're still the same.
Look,
It's still the same people that are telling you that 400 or 500 carbs is okay.
yeah, yeah,
Right? You still want a healthy, low-fat diet. I mean, they're still saying it.
right.
Yeah.
So the old food pyramid that got us all sick is basically what we're talking about. It at the bottom of the pyramid was grains, and it advised for, I think, 11 servings of grains a day, and that's definitely not paleo. Now, farming happened a little bit later. At some point, we may have found a culture that was highly dependent on grains. That would be, good to look at your ancestors. Maybe you can do better with certain grains, right? Maybe you're Italian and, pasta's your best friend. But where was I going with that? I don't know exactly. Looking at like cultures today though. So, who's eating, high carb today? So if you look at, like, I lived in
Asian culture.
Where?
Asian culture, high on rice.
Right. So I've
Noodles,
been in Japan for 3 years. They did eat a lot of rice, but I will say this: they were all very petite, and they did not eat that many calories. I mean, I didn't technically do, a rigorous field study.
Right.
I interacted with people, and I saw how they ate and behaved, and most of them were not eating probably much more than 1,500 calories a day. So even if they were skewed towards rice, by the way, a lot of it's white rice. So it was, whole. So it's taking off the part of the rice that's hard to digest. So there's factors there to look at. Hong Kong has today the highest, or the longest lived people in the world today. And they, on average, eat a pound of red meat a day. So that's something that
I could do that.
Yeah, because they'll always talk about like these blue zone cultures, right? And then they'll point to some fruit that they eat or some vegetable and try and make a case for that being the reason that they're so long lived. Like the Okinawans are one of them. They have a ton of people who would live to 100 years or more. And they eat the Goya fruit or the bitter fruit, and they would say, "Oh, it's the bitter fruit that's keeping them alive." Okay, let me tell you, when I ate at the local restaurants, the traditional ones in Okinawa, the Goya fruit was a garnish. I mean, yeah, you ate it, but it was just a little thing on your plate that had a variety of meats and rice and vegetables, and it was calorically nothing. So I don't think it was to say that it wasn't healthy for them and providing some benefit, but I think you have to look at the whole diet and try not to draw a conclusion that, well, I just need more Goya fruit, or I need more red wine, right? And that's going to help me live forever. Um, you have to look at the totality of the diet. I will say their traditional plates, they were what they were. It was really well portioned and really well balanced. You would get, a small heap of rice. You would get a small serving of meat. You would get fermented foods, a lot of kimchi. There's a lot of evidence for the health of fermented foods, and maybe a little bit of fruits and vegetables. It wasn't much. Those traditional plates were very small in nature.
Probably speaks to the other problem with so many of us. It's just the sheer volume.
Portion size.
I mean, just look at like a Thanksgiving table, of just too much food. No matter, I mean, even too much of the right stuff is going to hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't escape the calorie in, calorie out. So I don't think calorie in, calorie out is everything, but it's a pretty good starting place, because we could give you the healthiest, cleanest foods in the world, but we could still get you fat if you just ate handfuls of almonds all day long. You will gain weight. So identifying, that's usually step one, right? How many calories do I need? And usually I like to set that around your basal metabolic rate. So I think that's what we've done. Is that where you're at right now, Angela? Calorie? Yeah. So at the BMR. And then, it's important to spend time there, even if you don't see the progress right away. Because
Is that targeted to me?
well,
because that's what I'm struggling with. It's like, okay, when is this going to happen?
yeah, because it does take some time for your metabolism to adapt to your diet as well. And then, I think a good step forward is then to start potentially cycling that. So maybe try for a week of, maybe 250 calories less on average per day, and see what happens with that, and see if you start making momentum. If you're steady at a current set amount of calories and you drop, say on average 250 a day, and you see some weight loss, then that's good. That tells me that your metabolism was working efficiently with that current calorie intake, and then you lost the weight. But if we drop too soon, you might not actually get the weight loss. It might just continue to adapt down with you. And this is something like Dave and I have talked about a bunch, is the patience with the process. Because it becomes a question of like, where do you go, right? If we could take you down to 600 calories a day, but when that stops working, where do you go next?
Yeah.
And so it goes back to those two fundamental questions of what's needed, right? So how are you going to get all the essential vitamins, minerals, fatty acids into your body that are necessary for all the metabolic processes, right? For your immune system, for your energy, for your cognition, for repair. How are you going to get those on 900 calories a day even?
Right.
So that's actually what I'm going to show next week. I've been experimenting in Chronometer to find the simplest day of eating. So like trying to just boil it down to 3 meals of like really common foods, so like meat and potatoes, and actually hit all of the RDAs. And so I'll show in Chronometer. I already did it for one day. I want to see if I can do it for a couple days in Chronometer. And I'll tell you this, it was pretty much impossible to get it done without a multivitamin under 3,000 calories. With a multivitamin, I got it down to 2,100 calories. I was able to hit all of the RDAs. And so, the RDAs, we'll talk about that a little bit next week. Basically, you have adequate intake. Those are if an RDA isn't established. You have the recommended daily allowance, which is it's sufficient for 97% of the population. And then you have the tolerable upper limits, which is likely, or you could potentially have adverse reactions if you go above that. But that's also based off of averages, right? So for going back to vitamin D, the tolerable upper limit is 4,000 IUs. But I know many dozens of people who do 5,000 IUs a day and have no adverse reaction ever. And like I said, there are certain individuals who actually need more. So that's where, my point about doing the work, right? It really is so much more than just setting your calories, setting your macros, because it's just going to take time and experimentation and constant tweaking to figure out what actually is appropriate for you. What exactly do you need? And so, yeah, because the goal is to make it sustainable and to find your sweet spot, your homeostasis, your balance. I could set up a nutrition challenge and set all your calories at 1,300 a day and just go, let's go, and keep the motivation high for 6 weeks, and you all lose 6 pounds. But that will be the end of the line for us, and you'll say that was cool. Dennis did a good job. Maybe you lost 12 pounds, but where are you a year from now? So, that's something I haven't done at the gym. I get solicited all the time by these online, essentially like gurus who are like, hey, let me set you up and we're going to run a challenge at your gym. Like, you don't even have to pay up front. You can pay on the back end. We're going to run all the ads. We're going to bring in, 30 people, and you're going to run them through this generic template, and then whatever. And they're going to pay you, and then you pay us on the back end. But every single one of those is a lie. Like, there's a local business that did this. I won't name it, but this was back when I was working as a trainer at Genesis, and I was trying to. There was a girl there, and I was basically trying to sell my services to her. And I said, like, hey, like, looks like you're in here a lot. You're working really hard. Like, just a couple things I think I could help you with. And she was like, oh, well, I already signed up for this challenge. It's $500, and I think it was 6 weeks or whatever. And if I meet the weight loss goal, I get my money back. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, maybe I can help you with that, right? And and she was, they went and they did weigh-ins, and they went and did this workout. And so I said, all right, well, can you show me like what they set you up with? And so she showed me the calories and macros that she was set up with. And she wasn't even set up in a deficit, right? So like, just like mathematically, she was not going to lose the weight.
Of course, because they don't want her to get her money back.
Right.
So it was like totally dishonest. So, and that was almost better than them setting her up to lose the weight, because then what we know would have happened is that she would have crashed and burned at the end of it and rebounded. So at least they set her up with a healthy plan, but it was dishonest. And I'm like, I refuse to do that. Like, I'm more interested in finding people who are just willing to actually go into the next level and go deep on the journey and just see what that actually, where that gets us. I mean, I know where it gets us, but having patience with it is the kind of the key.
Well, I always try to, I mean, I'm thinking, well, it took me how long of being lazy to get where I'm at? So how long is it going to take me to reverse that? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen overnight. So.
Very true.
Yep.
Matt, are you able to talk at all?
Sure.
Well, I know you had a really successful run with keto, maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely lost a lot of weight with it. My biggest issue right now is family of 5 who don't like to eat the same things. So, and I'm generally responsible for providing the food. So it's more of a, if I had meals provided to me every day, I could do anything. But yeah, my struggle is just a normal meal plan, I guess.
Right on. Did you feel like the foods that you were eating that brought you success, like that was sustainable as far as like how you felt?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could have. Maybe I didn't have as much short-term energy. I didn't feel like I was maybe getting as much muscle gain, which I know it's better for maybe endurance. So that was something I didn't necessarily like, but yeah, I didn't have a problem. I believe you referred to my style of keto as, what was it?
Gas station keto.
Gas station keto, yes. So definitely I wasn't doing the quality. It's kind of the same situation, as I didn't really have the time to put into the quality, but the keto itself did work for me, yeah.
Right on. Yeah, no, I remember seeing you in the gym after. How long did you do it for?
I don't know. It might have been 6 months or so, or maybe longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah, you really lean there
Yeah.
a little bit.
That's an interesting topic too, right? Trying to do any one of these things, keto, paleo, any of those, when the rest of the people in your household aren't. I had a daughter that was doing Weight Watchers. My wife was kind of dabbling in a number of things. I'm doing keto, and what's good for me is not good for you if you're doing Weight Watchers. Not even close, right? And if you're doing Weight Watchers, I can't go near half of it. So how do you handle something like that? Because that's no small feat. I mean, Matt's example is probably something everyone is dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do. I'm lucky my wife stays home, so she really cooks for 2 entirely different diets in our household. But that's an interesting scenario to work through.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'll make some notes. Please remind me to hit on that. Because one of the things that I think is great about the paleo or natural diet, and one of my beliefs is that it should actually be the most enjoyable way to eat, because it is satiating foods. It's high protein, high fat, high quality foods. And then, but that's definitely true. I mean, one of the biggest things we're running up against is the culture that is everything from our immediate family to the community that surrounds us, and all the restaurants and all the food. So I think that we should definitely talk about that, is strategizing, and remembering certain things about your biology, like the fact that we can skip meals, or the fact that, you know, if you have to prepare a meal for the whole family, just because you made mashed potatoes doesn't mean you have to eat all of the mashed potatoes. And so identifying the foods that are serving you and really focusing in on them, right? So it's like, tonight we're going to make, by the way, Price Chopper, they have $5 Casey strips like all the time. This is becoming a really regular thing. So it's becoming a Monday ritual for Lincoln. I go pick him up after this, and he likes grocery shopping, and he has an odd, he's 4, by the way, and has like an odd sense of what we need. Apparently, like, my wife and I must just like complain out loud all the time about what we don't have. Because I took him to the store. He's like, we need this, we need that, we need. I'm like, are you sure? So anyway, and he was like spot on. I came home with all these groceries. She's like, oh, you did a great job. I was like, thank your son. It's become a ritual for us to go there and buy some Casey strips. And I'll just buy, I'll be completely honest, I've been buying like the Bob Evans microwavable mashed potatoes because it saves me time. And, you know, he'll eat them, and McLean will eat them, but I'm eating a very small portion. And he won't eat a ton of steak. She won't eat a ton of steak. So I'm eating heavy on the steak. And that's just how I navigate that situation. You know, trying to meet everybody's needs, but focus in or lean into, maybe have to buy 2 steaks so I can be fully satiated for myself tonight. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
It's just adapting.
Yeah, I think the other point too is like, so I do want to take time. We'll go over it next week, but about like the inputs, and this does make the case for supplementation, right? You know, what's the fear in fasting or skipping a meal? For me, it's not a calorie thing. Now, if you're doing it all the time, it becomes a calorie thing. Because again, we want to try and keep our metabolism firing. But for me, it's a micronutrient thing. I don't want to have, really, like, I don't want to miss a day where I'm not getting my B vitamins, or not, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Let's just be honest. Like, I don't want to miss a day where I don't have enough vitamin D. I don't want to miss a day where I don't have enough vitamin C. And so, you know, making the case for, you know, just taking a multivitamin, supplementing with some fiber, and then doing your best to just focus in on the foods that are serving your goals. So I think that probably be best explained next week. But yeah, I just wanted to lay the foundation today. So eat real foods. It should be enjoyable. If you're I guess that would be kind of my homework. Like, if you feel like you are eating real foods but not enjoying what you're eating, let me know, and let's talk about like a grocery list and menu items to get started. That can be like our assignment for the week if you're struggling with that. And then next week, we'll kind of get into more of calories and micronutrients and like actually hitting the numbers.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool.
If you do, like Angela or Dave, or if you guys want to adjust calories or anything offline, please let me know. We can do that as well.
Very cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, this was good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Well,
Very cool.
we got 4 this week, so hopefully we keep growing it. Matt, feel free to invite anybody. I sent this link out, or I shared it with Uriel. So Angela knows Uriel. He's a new member at the gym. Him and his wife run a chiropractic office in Olathe. And they're going to include the link and maybe even some of the recordings in their monthly newsletter. And we're going to try and kind of grow this group through that and see where it goes from there.
Perfect.
Cool. Dave, let me know, if you want to chat offline sometime this week and adjust any goals or anything.
Will do. I'll reach out. Awesome. Good seeing everybody.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Thanks.
Y'all have a good one.
See you
All
later.
right.
See ya.
Bye.